Today I will be reading and analysing the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over valleys and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, dancing and fluttering in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle in the Milky Way. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I to glance, tossing their heads in a sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. Our poet could not be gay in such jocund company. I gazed and I gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. When on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. The first context of the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud that I will be discussing is historical text context. The era of Romanticism was a cultural movement in reaction to Industrial Revolution that opposed the way that increased mechanization meant the rationalization of nature. It began in the late 1700s and had its peak in the 1800s to 1850s. Many exquisitely written poems went into depth about the beauty of nature. This is evident in the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. This poem centres around a string of daffodils as the speaker sees along a lake, and their beauty, calling them golden, comparing them to the shine of a starry night sky, and even personifying them multiple times to draw attention to them. The other type of context evident in the poem is author context, and within that, personal author context. The poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud was written by William Wordsworth. The poem recaptures an experience that he had with his sister Dorothy on April 15, 1802. At the time, they were living in the town Grandmere, Cumbria County, England. One day, they were taking a walk around a lake nearby and came upon a lake that was lined with daffodils. This is known as Dorothy Kept a Diary, and she wrote about the day she and her brother unexpectedly came across a crowd of daffodils. Many aspects of what she wrote about were extremely similar to what was found in Wordsworth's poem. This includes the many lines he wrote about the daffodils dancing in the wind, the daffodils' location, so beneath the trees and near the lake, and the feelings of joy they both felt by the presence of the daffodils. Wordsworth didn't write the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud until 1804, and it was then published in 1807 in his book Poems in 2 volumes. He revised the poem and added another stanza, and published it again in his collected poems. This version of the poem is the most well known and the one that I recited today. The other author context is social. There was many of Wordsworth's poems, including this one, that are credited with ushering in the Romantic era, and for changing the opinions of not only England, but many other European and American countries. More and more people became inspired by the beauty and wonder of nature. Many of England's concerns over needing to develop machinery and technology became more focused on developing emotionally, mentally, and connecting more with others. The last author context is historical. William Wordsworth was born on 7th of April 1770 in Cockermouth, Cumberland, in the Lake District. It was a glorious landscape surrounding his home that deeply affected Wordsworth's young and riveting mind and what embedded his love of nature. Wordsworth, who is very much against industrial age, is known as a defining member of the English Romantic movement. Like many other poets of the time, Wordsworth's poetry was deeply influenced by his love of nature and the picturesque view of lake country, which inspired many of his poems and where he lived most of his adult life. For the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, I made 2 interpretations. The first is that the poem is a portrayal of no matter who you are or what experiences you're going through, the beauty of nature is free for all to enjoy and awe at. I made this interpretation of the text through the reading practices of class and race. This is as I considered that someone of a lower class or a marginalised race may be mistreated in many aspects, but no one can stop them from enjoying a beautiful sunset or chirping birds, as nature is free for all. Another reading practice that influenced my interpretation of this poem was making an intertextual link between this poem and Ode to Nightingale. This is especially seen through the line, "The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and by cloud." This line is referring to the Nightingale's song, and it's saying it was heard by all ears. As we analysed this poem before I read "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud," this line in particular influenced how I read "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud." The second interpretation I made from "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud" was that the poem is a portrayal of how feelings of sadness and angriness can be eased by enjoying the beautiful simplicities of life, such as a wild string of daffodils, like the speaker in the poem did. I interpreted the text this way through the issue of pursuit of happiness and the theme of "it's the little things in life that lead to happiness." I came up with this theme through the understanding that the speaker of the poem was wandering, so in a sense lost purpose in life, or didn't know what his purpose in life was. Throughout the poem, the sight of the daffodils brings joy to him, and then later when he's at home, the remembrance of them once again brings that joy to him. It's just proof of how it took his mind off how he was wandering, and that the continuous appreciation of the little things in life build up to happiness. The last topic I will be discussing in this analysation is the poetic devices of the poem "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud." The name of this poem is "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud," which is also the first line of the poem, and in itself is ingenious, as it contains the poetic devices of imagery, personification, and is a simile. The first poetic device is personification of clouds. This is as they neither wonder nor feel emotion, although they do float, and this line portrays an image of a cloud floating endlessly through a blue sky, which is where the imagery comes into play. The speaker wandering could simply mean he has no particular place to be going, so is looking around and exploring. The loneliness of the speaker can be interpreted in a different way. Although clouds float around singly, it is never clearly stated whether he is with someone or not. So the speaker's loneliness can be taken as an emotion he is feeling, as though the speaker feels disconnected from the world and is not literally alone. This loneliness is slowly turned into joy at the beauty of the daffodils. The second example of personification is of the daffodils, and this can be seen multiple times throughout the poem, as the poem essentially centres on this bright yellow flower. The first personification of the daffodils is seen in stanza 1, line 6, with "dancing in the breeze," and then again with "tossing their heads in a sprightly dance," which is the last line of stanza 2. The speaker is personifying the daffodils with the human ability of dancing, but not only this, he is also describing them as sprightly, which is another word for lively. The final personification is of the waves, with "the waves beside them danced," which is stanza 3, line 13. Every aspect of nature within this poem is personified, which creates a sense of respect. This personification puts emphasis on the beauty of nature and the fascination that Victorian poets had with it during the Romantic era. Not only are the daffodils personified, but they are also compared to another beauty of nature within the poem. Stanza 2, line 7 and 8 compare daffodils to stars in the Milky Way, as though daffodils are as bright and endless as the stars. The final poetic device found within the poem "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud" is metonymy, and it is displayed in the second last line of the final stanza, where the speaker says, "And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with daffodils." The speaker chooses to say heart to specifically focus on it. The heart is the body part constantly associated with emotions, so using it draws attention to the joy that the speaker gets thinking of daffodils. It helps the reader focus on the fact that daffodils, or in a bigger sense, nature, bring happiness to the speaker. And that is all. Thank you for listening to my very bad analysation of "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud." Gonna go cry now.